It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, good evening. Welcome along to the Rangers Rabble Podcast. My name's... What are you laughing at?
Sorry, it's still that intro, by the way, that gets me every time.
It's still the intro. That's I know. I've not had time, but I'm going to sort that intro out. But yeah, hello, I'm Martin. I'm your host of tonight's show. I'm joined by Robert, Brian, and Stuart. Good evening. I hope you're all well, guys. I hope everybody watching as well. That's too many wells. Get your comments in, get liking, get sharing, get subscribing, get all that good stuff. As we are here on your Monday Night Rabble, normally to talk all things Rangers, all different sorts of subjects, and there was a game at the weekend that we can probably dive into. There's probably only really one topic of conversation, which we can probably split over about four different topics. That's the board, that's the manager, that's spending, that's transfers, that's how this team is looking on the lead up to the season. And before anybody asks, no, I haven't got headphones on just to hide my hair. That's not true at all. I don't even know really, guys, where to start tonight. But Robert, I've not spoke to you for a while, so I'll come to you first. Fans not really too happy. Podcasts getting it in the neck. Fan media getting it in the neck. The board getting it in the neck. It's all about doom and gloom, isn't it?
I said this. I listen even every day. Thanks for having me on as always. It's not the start we'd wanted. You're trying to obviously gain some positivity and set off on the right foot after what was a bit of a catastrophe last season, having been in a great position, having it in your own hands, and then kind of throwing it away. So the Hampden stuff, we've seen how that's played out. People shouting for the board to come out and say something sooner. It didn't happen, and now we've had Clement come out and say, players we've signed aren't ready for the first team, and we need to sell before we can buy, which I'm sure we'll delve into in deeper context. But it's just not been great. As I said to the guys before we came on, choking for the competitive stuff to start so we can start talking about football games and performances rather than this off-field political stuff. But it's all relevant because, the Champions League stuff will come sooner rather than later. And if you've not recruited well, then you'll be out. So it's a difficult time and we need to manage it or navigate it, should I say, perfectly to have any chance of being in that Champions League and getting off to the league campaign in perfect condition.
Well, this is the question, right? Stuart, I'll bring this to you if you smoke my draw. With the board as transparent as a bricked up window, where is all this negative pish coming from? I'll let you elaborate on that, Stuart.
I think we talked last week about, in this day and age, if there is silence, then people will fill it, and people will fill it with whatever they believe is going to be the truth. And that will come from our fans, come from opposition fans, it will come from journalists. Whatever they think is going on, they will fill it. And again, that's why I generally can't understand why this board remains silent. Now, I know John Bennett has said he's going to give a kind of a fuller and more personal update later in the month. Why later in the month? Now, come out and give something now, and then if you need to come out and give another 15, 20 minute interview later in the month, just do that. It's crying out for the board to set the scene and tell us exactly what's going on now. I think the interview that Clement did at the weekend, it now appears that maybe actually some of what he said has maybe been taken slightly out of context again. But, you know, that's journalists in it again for you. They had the perfect opportunity to clarify things with him right there then. They didn't. They then wait until after the game to release that story. So nobody can then ask Clement after the match about it. And you now have this over the weekend, this kind of big story which bubbles away because there is this kind of silence that's ongoing. So I've said it repeatedly on this podcast that if you believe that you can be the chairman of Rangers Football Club and not speak, then I'm sorry, it's not the position for you. We know he gave a bit of a car crash interview a while back. Well, you need to just go over that. Man up and get out there. There is so much going on at the moment that in that position, and we've not got a CEO, so Bisgrove isn't there to kind of play that role. Then John Bennett has to step up and start speaking to the fans, and he should just be doing that now rather than waiting. We've now got clarity in Hampden, so come out and explain a wee bit more about that process, etc. I'm not expecting he'll be able to give all the answers. You know, people will be, where am I sitting and all that, right? That's no, he's not going to get into that, but at least just explain what has led us to this situation, and then, you know, maybe try and clarify some of the points that have been raised in terms of what's available to the manager, you know, and how he sees things going. Just get it done quickly, because when there is a void, people will fill it, and whether that's filled with the truth or lies or somewhere in between, this is what you get. And, you know, every day there seems to be another development, and at the moment it seems to be pretty much all negative.
I mean, it's grown arms and legs, I suppose, Brian. I mean, this has all stemmed from years of not winning anything, not being particularly great on the park. You know, I think I done my wee vlog thing, and I says, look, in years gone by, it's Rangers versus Celtic. Rangers win sometimes, Celtic win sometimes, but that trophy cabinet, you keep adding to it. And we've barely added to our trophy cabinet, right? So that's probably where a lot of the anger stems from. Then you add in the Beale saga, where we spent loads of money. Then you add in the stadium saga, where it's not going to be ready. Now you add in Clement's comments. Is it just a case of it's just been a accumulation of just all these different factors, and now there's certain supporters out there, probably a large, I would say, section of supporters that are going, all this added together now, it's just too much?
I think it is. I mean, as you just said, you know, you've got the stadium problems, you've got the, you know, everything else that goes with it, and it's a reaction, a totally normal reaction, in the sense of it's just bad news after bad news. And as Stuart rightly says, we've heard nothing from the chairman for, I can't remember how many days it is now. It's been a long, long time, and to not even. It seemingly what Wilf was saying in the comments that this video was recorded on Wednesday and it was only released on Saturday. So it's, you know, there's things aren't adding up.
Brian, released after an interview was done with fan media.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of things just not adding up just now. And to hear nothing from the chairman to at least, you know, say where what's went wrong, and, you know, the Hampden scenario, you know, with the building works, you know, at least come out and give the fans a bit of knowledge and a bit of sort of information that they can at least digest, and stop, as Stuart says, the noise that's just filling all the voids, because that's, as Stuart said, you know, you just start filling rubbish and rumours, and probably a lot of it's not even true, but when there's no sort of news or information coming from the board, I'm afraid that's what happens.
Come back to the board in a second, Robert, right? Let me put a point to you. I don't know how people will take this, but just reading just simply into what Clement said, we need to sell before we can then buy, whether that's due to finance, whether that's due to wages, whether it's due to the transfer kit or it's due to wages. You would imagine it's probably due to the amount of players that we've still got at the football club, and you can't just keep adding to it. Right? Fans are unhappy about that. I'm unhappy about that. I'd imagine you are all unhappy about that, because we want to see new signings. But we can't have our cake and eat it as well, can we? because it's not too long ago that we've seen what happens when you don't run a football club properly financially, and we've seen the issues that can arise from that. So are supporters wanting their cake and they want to eat it at the same time, or have we got a point?
From my point of view, it's more so that he's actually come out and put it in the public domain. I think we all knew it, that we'd have to sell before we could buy. Now you put yourself in a position where clubs know you need to sell these players, so they've kind of got you over a barrel, whereas you might have got 2 million for Scott Wright, you might only get 1.5 now, or for example. So I think that's the side of it that I don't like. It's not been very tactful. Add to that is Clement just getting his excuses hit nice and early, because there's been a lot of this, think long term. We're not going to act short term. We've seen what's happened in the past, and it is relevant. I get that. I do understand that. But at the same time, Celtic haven't weakened massively. They've still got the core of what is a title-winning side, and we've lost quite a few players, experienced players, and Lundstram and Jack. Barisic has gone obviously as well. So you need to be strengthening there. And if these players that are coming in aren't ready to start, looks like Barron and Hefty are the only ones that seem to be in favour of pushing for a jersey, then we need some more in. And if it does mean shifting players on, I think we already knew that. But now that it's out there, I think it sort of stifles your hand a little bit when you get into bargain with clubs for fees.
Oh, I done it, damn it. Just as I was about to pull you up as well, Robert, channel member JD. And by the way, if you want to help support the channel and become a channel member as well, you can do so by using the link below, or the link is in the description. You get your members show on a Thursday, and we're bringing back 1 or 2 wee things as well as a bit of a thank you to people for helping to support the channel. No, we haven't got an update on Muggate. The mug sitting to my left.
I've never called them a mug on this podcast, so I don't know what's going on here, but not guilty, Your Honour.
I'm still waiting on my cup, my Tunnel Pod cup, Robert.
It's in the post, mate.
Thank you very much. Stuart, can you just come in on that? Because you're normally the voice of reason, right? When it comes to transfers and not being overly reactionary. I think we all knew, I think Robert's right, we all knew that it was a case of you can't just continuously bring in players without letting players go. And maybe Robert's saying, well, the managers maybe shouldn't have come out and really said anything, which is a fair point. But if the manager doesn't come out and we still haven't got any real transfers in, if you like, right? First team members or players that we would say, that's a first team player, he's going to improve the squad. If we're still waiting to get rid of players, if that's another week, if that's another 2 weeks, the fans are going to come out and say, what's happening at our football club?
So I think there's a few things on this, and I'll caveat what I'm saying, that this isn't me knowing anything, but going by what other fan media channels are saying who have got closer ties to the club. Go back to my original point, it does look as if some of what you said is maybe being taken slightly out of context. And what Clement, the feeling is, there is still the ability for him to bring in players. So the interview that he's just done with RTV, he's pretty much saying we have agreement in place with a number of players who are excited about joining Rangers. And if you take what you said previously, that's then going to be the start of the more experienced players coming into the squad. What he's saying is that they can't leave their club at the moment because their club are then trying to find or deal with getting the replacement in for all that, and plus the Euros and so on, etc., has caused the delay. I think what he's probably meant by saying that is that this is a bigger job than what he thought it was in October. I think when you first listened to that, it wasn't a huge surprise to say, well, we need to sell before we can buy. I didn't find that completely shocking. I think what I was kind of worried about was, had he been told something or promised something back in October that actually then is not coming to fruition? I think what's actually happened is he's maybe thought these players or the squad was in a better shape, and maybe he could be the man to kind of fix that. I think he's came in now and realised there is a lot of dross here, and actually the job is far bigger. So maybe originally I was thinking, well, I could go for that experienced player, but actually he's having to do more of the I need to get experience in, but I also need to supplement that by trying to get players in the door early enough that we can sell in a couple of years, which will then, as he said in his RTV interview, increase the budget and you go again. So I think there is a bit, again, typical, journalism. I get really frustrated when you listen to press conferences and, what are you expecting from Hibs? Well, we've played them fucking 6 times this season. What do you think? And I'm really glad you've spent all that time going to, on a journalism degree, and that's what you're coming up with. But again, on that interview, there was a prime opportunity for that journalist to absolutely clarify what the manager meant. I think it's been said as well. I think his English is really, really good, but sometimes he does say something and it's maybe not the right word, or it's maybe a bit more direct than what he's potentially means. So again, I think some things can be taken out of context. As a wider point, though, if we were in a better position and this was the summer that we were having, we've already brought in 5, 6 or 7 players or whatever it is, I think we'd be sitting here slightly happier. The issue to me isn't with this transfer window yet. This is a reaction to what's happened in the last 4 transfer windows or whatever it may well be, where they've been failures and it's now come to a real head where we're having to do another rebuild job. And that, I think that is feeding in. So I get that people want signings now, and we all do, of course we do. But I think a lot of the frustration is actually a build-up and a reflection of what's happened in the past. So I think it's been said that after the Man United game, I think Heart and Hand specifically have said, I think they are going to ask him at the press conference, can you bring a player in now, or do you have to get somebody out the door? And hopefully that will clarify it. But I think the general feeling is that it's not, we've got no money and we can't bring anybody in until we sell somebody. People need to go because the squad's too bloated. I think that was the kind of general view he was making. But again, that's just what I've kind of read and listened to.
Right, I'm going to come back to this discussion in a wee second. And I'll come to you in a wee minute, Brian, right? But Robert, as you have delved into the world of podcasts, i.e. starting your own, doing your own stuff, right? I want to take this question to you because I don't class the Rangers Rabble as fan media for the simple fact that we don't have press access or anything like that, right? We have very little to no communication with Rangers Football Club. We simply just do a podcast. We come on here, we talk nonsense for an hour and a half, whatever it is, and then we go back to just doing whatever it is we do when we're not on here, right? So I want to put this question to you, Robert, from channel member KW, right? When fan media gets too close, the questions get diluted. I don't agree with that, right? But I want to get your thoughts on it. Because maybe because I run this and because I know David and because I know Stevie and I speak to them, maybe I've got fan media tinted specs on, right? I'll say why I don't agree with it in a wee second, but I want to get your opinion, Rob.
What by diluted he means? What sort of looking after their own position and scared to ask?
I would imagine it's not asking the questions that I don't want to say normal supporters, but supporters that don't have the access that they've got would ask.
But again, like Stuart said before, I think all journalists are guilty of that, though. They're all trying to keep themselves in because, journalists have been barred down the years for coming out with stuff that, managers or clubs haven't liked. So I think they're all trying to toe the line. It's a difficult one, but surely, as Stuart was saying previously, if Heart and Hand are going to come out and ask him direct, then he's going to have to give you a direct answer. But I think all fan media is toeing a line in terms of keeping their inroads with the football club, or they're on the other side of the fence. They're like us, with a sort of sailing close to the wind, and week on week, and not really looking for a relationship with a club direct. So it just depends what you're looking for, I suppose. But in terms of, I guess the guys are talking about Heart and Hand and Four Lads Had a Dream. They're very successful at what they do. There's no doubt in that. So I don't think you can get away from that. But to answer his question direct, maybe I wouldn't say dilute, but I think they're probably very careful or mindful, should I say, of what they're asking because of their position and how privileged they are to a degree.
Brian, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here. You've been a subscriber to Heart and Hand for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the conversations that I've had with David, for the amount of times I've listened to Heart and Hand and Four Lads, I don't particularly watch Rangers Review, but that's just me. The reason I don't think that they dilute their questions or whatever, there's a specific way in which when you're in these press conferences, not the type of questions you have to ask, but a way you have to ask questions to get answers. If we rocked in and went, right, Clement, why you no signing players? Why you no doing this? Why you no doing that? You will just get told, get out, you're not getting back in. I personally don't think, Brian, and I've seen fan media get it quite a bit recently, actually. I don't think that they go in and necessarily toe a party line. Are they made aware of things that we don't know? Well, yes, because they have contacts on the inside. But as anybody who's ever had a source knows, if a source tells you something and they say, don't tell anybody until we tell you that you can tell them, well, if you go and tell everybody, then you don't get that information again. I was told 3 weeks ago that the stadium wasn't going to be ready, but I was told by the person that told me, please don't say anything because I could lose my job. So I says, okay, right, I won't say anything. So I personally don't think that the only two I can judge is Four Lads and Heart and Hand. And I don't think they do anything like a traditional journalist or newspaper does. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, they've got to word questions very carefully. They don't want to just steam in and, ask a question just as bluntly as that. As you say, if they're getting told certain things are happening, and as you say, keep it on the QT, then the last thing you're going to do is go and tell somebody what's happening because you'll lose your press privileges. So there's all that as well. I mean, they've got to be smart in the sense that if you're wanting to know something, there's a roundabout way of asking it. But again, you've got to be careful because obviously the club are telling you, we've told you something, but don't say anything for X amount of weeks. And it's very difficult. These guys, as you say, they're not actually, sort of press as per se, like, the newspaper stuff. They're fan blogs, but it's totally different in that sense. And I feel sorry for them because there's a little bit of, they want to say things, but they can't. And it must be a hard gig because, as I say, they must be bursting to tell things, but they can't. And that must be an awful thing as well because they know things that are happening and really can't say much because they've been told not to.
Yeah, and William's asking, do they ever get told anything exclusive? Well, I've never asked them if they get told anything exclusive, but I would imagine they probably do, due to the connections that they have. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, Stuart, is because I've seen them getting a bit of battering on the old socials. I know they go through cycles where they get when we're particularly not doing very well. They tend to get a battering. But if I take David Edgar, for example, financially, David Edgar doesn't need to be part of Rangers press accreditation. He doesn't need to do it. I'm sure his podcast, his Heart and Hand, would run just as smoothly without being part of the press stuff.
Yeah, I mean, let's say I don't know what his financial situation is, but he runs a very successful podcast, which I think is his main career. So he must be doing something right. I think fan media is the way to go now because I think there has been an improvement in press conferences and the questions that are asked, trying to bring more of a fan perspective to it rather than, as I touched on before, some the lack of thought that actually goes into any of these questions. I also think you have to remember as well that Rangers managers will be media trained, and they can't just go in there and ask who's the next signing, Mr. Clement, because he's not going to give you that answer in any way. So I do have some sympathy for them. I would much rather there were fans, and I think that sometimes it's forgotten that the guys that run these podcasts, they are fans like the rest of us, and I'm fairly sure they want exactly what we want in terms of success, a successful team on the park and Rangers winning things. So, but I would much rather that they were asking questions than, Rahman Barswaz or whatever it is, to who does literally put no thought into it. Let's see if David Edgar's true to his word, and on Saturday that he gets that clarification from the manager, because he's put it out there that he's going to do that. And I think the club do use them, because I think the club recognise that
the club aren't stupid. Sure, the club aren't stupid.
Oh, exactly. But they also use them because they know that there is an audience that they now pull in. So they will use them to get certain things out there. And again, I would rather that comes from a fan media outlet than a newspaper, for example, because we've seen in the past how they act towards our club, how they've acted to fan media in the past as well, by the way. So I have sympathy for him. I don't think it's just as simple as just, as you say, rocking up and asking these questions. I don't believe in. I think if people were being honest, if they were in that position, I'm not convinced that they would be going in there 2-footed on the Rangers manager.
I know, and listen, podcast-wise, if we were part of the fan media and we had access to interviews with managers and players, and if we had access to a bit of knowledge that we could break, obviously that's going to be more beneficial for your show. But we tried it, and being up on the media gantry is great, and you get to meet ex-players, and you get to meet board members, and you get to swim in that pool. But like somebody said, it's good to have fan media. We need it. I completely agree with Stuart. It's absolutely necessary, because I would much rather have Heart and Hand and Four Lads than I would The Sun, the Daily Record, or even going as far
Martin,
back
let me ask you this, Martin. What would your response be to Rangers if they said, right, great, you're on board, you're fan media, but you can't be asking any questions about the team's performance, or if we feel that you're going into this area, that's not allowed? What would your response be?
Shove it up your arse.
Yeah, so, and I think that's the response that we'd expect. I think fans should give some credit to these other players. I don't know for definite, but I would imagine that they're not doing it because, by the way, I imagine it's not cheap to become, I don't know what it costs to become a partner in terms of fan media at Rangers. So it won't be cheap. So if you're putting that money in, I don't think you would want to be then told you can say this, but you can't say that.
I genuinely don't think that happens. I genuinely don't think that happens. But I just wanted to have a quick discussion about that, because I've seen a few people on socials, and there's been people messaging and asking about fan media, and people get us confused with fan media. We're just guys at Rabble on a podcast, hence why it's called the Rangers Rabble. So, Robert, just a direct question. For you, has the criticism that the board's been getting by people like myself and other supporters, is it fair, or are we just in a position now as supporters where we just feel that fed up that we're maybe overreaching slightly in our criticism?
No, I think it's fair. I think it's, without a share of a doubt, there's no debate for it for me. They've not done enough in terms of coming out and being vocal. As well said before, this probably doesn't get as much headlines if you're winning and you're taking trophies, but we're not. Simple fact that the fact of the matter, is that we're not. We're far behind. We're chasing. So we've got ground to make up. The whole thing with the stadium, I know we spoke about the back teeth, but could have been planned a bit better. If you know you need materials, order them in advance and store them somewhere, so that when the work's ready to go, bang, you jump on and you get it, underway. You don't have these sort of delays. Supporters need to be, kept up. They've paid their money. Supporters pay their money, and this is what annoys me. It's like since 2012, I feel like I've been taking a bit of a ride with the boards. I'll say it's because there's been a couple of them, but certainly, they know we're going to spend the money. And this, I don't know if it was Alan that said in pod last week, if somebody goes, they don't care because somebody else just filled the seat. So you can't really hold them to ransom. You've got to just go along with it. It's not a nice place for a supporter to be. So that's why you want them to be as transparent as possible. It's just not been there. So as I say, I'm really hoping that in a couple of weeks' time we're looking back on this and just parking it, and this is not going to be the excuse for us in 6 months' time to say, right, actually, we're in this position because of what happened back in the summer. We need to be sort of, as I say, better prepped for this year. So far, I did watch the interview with Clement before I came on, the one on RTV, and it did seem like there was a disparity in the comments that had been printed to the comments that were actually coming out of his mouth. So I agree with what Stuart said there. Certainly, he was a bit.
Did you feel it was backtracking slightly, Robert?
Well, I'm going to be really honest with you. I did sit in my bed watching it, but listening to Stuart make a good case for Phil Clement, I'm back on the fence. Actually, I feel I'm back on side with Clement. I think maybe he was just taking it out of context. So I'll give him the benefit of doubt. Look, I've been vocal in the group chat that I'm not looking forward to the season as much as I should be, and maybe that's because I ran away with myself last year. I was singing we're going to win the league when we're putting 5 past Hearts at Ibrox, and I got caught up in it all, and I won't do that to myself this year. I just cannot. So I don't think we've strengthened anywhere enough, but that, unless it's Stuart again, that's going to come. So we just have to bide our time. As I say, I don't want to use this as an excuse 6 months down the line. We need to be there and challenging and doing our talking on the park, and hopefully it's only a couple of months at Hampden, a handful of games, and then we're back at Ibrox and we can draw a line under it.
Do you go along with that, Brian?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. I feel as if maybe I've been slightly overly negative. Maybe I'm reading into things too much as well. And I think it's just starting to get to me that everywhere you look, and we're only a couple of pre-season games in, right? But everywhere you look, it's just complete negativity. And but what might happen, Brian, is, and I think Robert's got a point, in 2 weeks' time, if we somehow manage to convince Linlithgow Rose to sign Scott Wright, and we somehow manage to get Dessers out, that might be quite controversial, I don't know anymore. If we somehow manage to get Dessers out, we bring in 2 or 3 first-team players, and we start to play well, everybody's going to look back at these shows and go, by the way, what you're all about, he's jumped the gun far too much. So I'm just trying to figure out whether I'm being extremely negative and extremely reactionary, and I need to calm down, as well as a lot of the supporters out there, or we are rightly valid in the way that we feel.
I think the criticism is valid in the sense of like the stadium stuff. I think that's all perfectly normal. I think that's, you know, it's almost, you know, the times. I can't remember who said it, but there was a tight window to get this job done, and you know it's very tricky to get building stuff done at the best of times, you know, on time. This was just a far too tight a window to get it done. I think folks' frustration as far as transfers is obviously because the pre-season started and they're not in for the pre-season. I think people want all the transfers in, done and dusted before we went away to pre-season. Well, again, that's just going to be not possible because there's obviously, as Clement has said, you know, we're going to have to move boys on before we can take in. So I think we said it, Robert, in the last one, you know, was it the random Rabble last week? We've almost just got to be a bit more patient and a bit more sort of chilled and just sort of, but it's very difficult. I understand that. But I think we've just got to take a step back and just sort of, you know, as far as transfers go, I think we've just got to take a step back and trust the manager and the head of recruitment because well, we've got no other option. But I mean, these guys have done it before. Well, certainly Coppin's done it before at PSV with some of the signings he made there. So, you know, the guy's got a good record in signing young guys and then moving them on for big money. So, you know, we've got to trust this guy is going to get the job done.
There may also be that slight language barrier as well, Stuart, because like you say, look, he speaks fantastic English, but you can always get lost in communication when it's not your first language that you're speaking in, right? So I take that point on board completely. But were you worried at all when he pretty much said that it's actually a bigger job than he realised, it's a bigger rebuild than he realised when he mentions the likes of Nsiala, who might not be ready to come straight into the first team So then that's got supporters going, right, well, if he's not been brought in for the first team, who starts in defence? Is it still going to be Goldson and Davies? Is Balogun, Suter? Is that going to be the defenders that we've got? How is things going to carry on going forward? So was that a slight worry for you? And I don't want to put words in the manager's mouth, but pretty much that he said this is actually a bigger rebuild than I first thought.
Not particularly, because I think we can see what we've been watching it, and we've been watching it for a number of seasons now, and not knowing that it's not been where it needed to be, and that this squad needed refreshed. I think, and the people I said previously, I think the feeling within the fans, yes, this window so far is getting some criticism, but actually I think that's because of what's happened in previous windows, actually. And I do have sympathy for the manager that, it probably would be very easy for him to just try and go with experience and try and, bring in 6-7 players that, he knows fine well we can come in and do that job. But this is the bigger picture that I think him, Coppin, and he talks in the RTV interview about that everybody's on board with this. So him, the recruitment team, Coppin, the actual board themselves, that this ability to bring in young players, make them better, and move them on, we can't keep kicking that down the road. So he's having to do two things at the same time here. Now, that might mean that we might have to go through another season where it's it might not be perfect, and that's me not saying, by the way, that I'm throwing in the towel or anything like that, but maybe there has to be an expectation. I think it was always going to be really difficult for him to be able to do everything that he wants to do in this one window. January was also going to need to play its part. Next summer is going to need to play its part, but it hopefully over time, by having some younger players that during next summer you're maybe only having to pick one or two of them up, and it's maybe one or two experienced players that then add to it. At the moment, you're talking 10 to 14 players having to come in because it's another rip it up and start again. So I have sympathy for him. I'm not overly surprised though that now that he's really in the door and what he's been seeing in training, he now knows that it's not good enough. He got an uplift out of these players more than I think any of us thought. I don't believe anybody, and Robert's talking about that 5-0 game there, I don't think any one of us thought we would be in that position when Clement came in. But what happened is that certain players reverted to type, and when the pressure came on, stuff like that, and he knows that. So let's say not overly surprised that he's now saying, it's actually, he might have been somebody I thought could do a job for me, but actually now I've seen him up close for a number of months. No, I don't believe that's the case. I need to get somebody that's better in that position. And by better, I mean, their ability, but also their ability to be available to play games on it and play the style of football that he wants. I think he mentioned last season, what was it, 4 players he said he thinks could play the style of football he wants 3 times a week. The rest, no, they're not capable of doing it. So, it's a massive job. I have sympathy for him. I think he deserves some patience with us. But I repeat, I think a lot of the fans' frustration comes from what's happened previously. But that's not the fault of Clement or Clotten. But it is the fault of a board who have allowed certain managers to go and do what they wanted to do just on their own.
Right. So if I take from what you've just said, that's worrying, I suppose, in a way. I mean, Stuart Allison is saying, how many more seasons are we going to be a team in transition, in Toronto Bear Channel member? It's fair. But I think as a support, we need to realise we are not the club or team we used to be and are still trying to build back to that. Is that fair comment, Robert? And obviously by the club or team we used to be, he's talking about success. Because we haven't been successful.
Listen, I get what Stuart's saying, and it's lovely to hear the manager saying, look, for long enough we've not been building for the future of this football club. You need to get younger players in, build them up, sell them on. Brilliant. However, as Socrates says there, if he doesn't beat Celtic, he's going to be under the cosh. And who's going to put up with it? Who's going to, honestly, like, are you going to sit there and watch it week on week, knowing it's no good enough, and think, well, actually, next year he'll maybe get it right? Because I don't think you get that. As much as you need to build, you're going to build long term. Glasgow is short term. It's a very short term city. If you're not winning, you're no good, and the supporters will be on their backs week upon week. So it's trying to find that balance for the manager, and I think it's very, very difficult. I don't envy him one bit. I dare say he has probably been sold a dream, and the reality is quite harsh in stark contrast to that. So it's difficult, as I say. I really hope he does get it right. We obviously all want him to succeed, but I don't, at the moment, as it sits in front of me right now, I don't see it. I don't see where it's going to come from. Wolf saying there, lots of teams haven't done any business, granted, but our direct opposition didn't have to do lots of business. It's us that need to do all the business. Their team was good enough to go and win the league when they were at probably their worst they've been in years. They're not going to be that bad again this year, so we need to be even better than we were last year to try and combat that. That's how it plays out in my head anyway. So, and at the minute, I don't see that. As Stuart says before, too many players there that revert to type. They're still there. They're still going to be the heartbeat of the side as it stands. He said,
if nobody wants them, but Robert, we can't just release them.
I know that, but what do we do then? Because we're not going to then go and do what we want to do and dominate Scottish football and win trophies. I mean, I don't want to win one league title every 4 or 5 years. That's not what I'm here for. I want to be dominant for a sustained period, albeit then you maybe go into a wee bit of transition. Your opponent takes one back, and that gives you, the reset to say, right, we need to go again here. We've dropped off a wee bit, but you don't want to be constantly chasing. Somebody said before, 12 out of 13, it's not good enough. And how do we? I get building for the future. I totally do. Like, I'm no daft, but at the same time, you're not going to be afforded all that if you're sort of, 4 or 5 points behind as you get into October and you've been playing away from home and playing at Hamley, and playing dreadfully and out of Europe and all this. So it's fine margins, and it's in Scotland especially. If you're no straight into the European competition and you're trying to get that qualification, then you've got the pressure on early doors. So it is hard to manage. I just, as I say, I'm not overly confident as it stands at the moment.
Can we not, Brian, build for the future, but at the same time bring in enough quality players to be able to win this league that we're in? We're not in. Look, everybody makes fun of England, and Man City always not run away, but Man City always win it, right? But it's a competitive league, right? We are in a league where we should be in a position to have 4, 5 quality starting players, and then have youth and whatever round about that to build for the future. That should be enough to beat the majority of teams in our league. Is it good enough to go and beat Celtic? Probably not, right? But over the course of a season, we should be able to manage a rebuild with enough quality to at least challenge, and if not, go and win the league. Europe, different story, right? We're so far away from the Champions League, it's untrue competitive-wise. But we should be able to perform a rebuild and still challenge for the league, surely.
Absolutely. And as I've said before, we as a club used to plunder, Scotland for all the best, up-and-coming players, and that hasn't happened for a long time. Connor Barnes probably the first sort of real free youngster that we've signed for a long time that's got bags of potential.
He just cost me $8 million in Football Manager, by the way.
Well, there you go. But that's the sort of thing that we were. That's what happened. We plundered the Scottish League and made our team better and others weaker. Problem is now, a lot of the clubs, as soon as we come along, don't want to deal with us, or the price goes sky high, and the old blue tax comes in, so we lose the chance of getting guys for decent money. So we need experience. I mean, we have signed a lot of youngsters, excuse me, but we do need experience, and it's getting that experience, getting the right experience, it's getting the right players in the right positions. But as Robert was just saying, we've still got guys in the building that we really don't want there, but they're still there. And I think if they're still in the building come the first game of the season, then I'm not very hopeful.
Just to answer Lyndon quickly, Rangers. But yeah, Stuart, I want to take us to you for Ian. Great comments, by the way, Ian, all the way through this. I've been keeping an eye on them. I genuinely don't think we can do both in terms of I think he's obviously talking, Stuart, in terms of the rebuild, in terms of getting enough quality players in with enough youth around about him. Due to the sorry state of our finances by comparison to Celtic, this financial debate between Rangers and Celtic about how much have Rangers got in the bank compared to Celtic's millions in the bank, financially, surely we can compete for the league title in Scotland.
Yes, I think we can. They might have a lot of money in the bank, but they're not going to spend it all. And the frustrating part for me is, yes, they've picked up some good players who have been successful, but they've also picked up some amount of dross over the years. What they're very good at is then getting rid of that dross and either getting their money back or actually turning some profit onto it. We lost, as Robert touched on, a number of experienced players in that summer. Didn't get a penny for any of them when, just letting these players run down their contract. That has to stop. If somebody isn't willing to, renegotiate a contract or stay on, then they need to move. You hope that Coppin and Clement have contacts, the scouting system that we can start to pick up some gems. I think Diamande could potentially be a gem for us. Yes, he costs money, but I think he's got the potential that he can come in there and be right up there as one of the best midfielders in the country. So it is doable, but we need to see an improvement in the success rate of who we bring in. And the last few windows, that success rate, it hasn't been good enough. And that's not to say that you're going to get every single one right, by the way. That's impossible to do. But if we're going to bring in 12 players this summer, then we need 8, 9 of them to seriously do us a turn. And that is a tough ask. Is it doable? Yes, I think the manager believes it's doable. I get what Robert's saying in terms of, he'll be under pressure, etc. I would think that my counter argument would be, I think if we were to lose Clement or he goes, we then go back into another cycle of another manager coming in and saying, well, that was his players and, and so on and so forth. So I think we need some stability. I think that's been another a massive problem. I think the board realise that now. I think he will get time to do that. So it is doable. I think the early signs are positive in terms of there at least seems to be some sort of plan at the moment. So that's a positive, a tick in my box. Obviously, you need to kind of wait and see how they go. And yeah, I know this is not easy, but come the end of the transfer window, then I think we could sit here on this podcast and have a real proper discussion about, right, where are we? Do we look better? Do we look not? And I know that's not an easy thing because there are big games on the way, but I can see Rangers, actually a transfer deadline day might be really interesting for us to watch for the first time in a long time, because I think we'll be active right up until the final minutes of it.
I hope not. I really, really hope not. Switching tact a wee bit. And Robert, I'll start off with you, and then Brian and Stuart, you can jump in on this. A super chat in from channel member Stephen Gillespie. Thank you very much, Stephen. Greatly appreciated. And of course, if you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button below, or if it's not there, the link for which is in the description. Right. Who did the panel want out? Negativity is killing me. So far this window, we have replaced Born away, Jeffrey, Jack with Barron, Cortez and Danilo back in the side. It's not all doom and gloom, troops. Robert.
Right, where do we start? Listen, I think the manager said himself that the only one that's irreplaceable is the goalkeeper. So I think that answers that question. But if it was me, I'm not going to go through them all because you all hate me by the end of it. And I think Connor.
I tell you what, Robert. Right, give me two players that you would absolutely want out the door.
Connor Goldson is top of the list. I saw I was at the semi-final against Hearts, and I kind of saw he looked a sort of a lonely figure, cut off. I think something's went on there. Probably never hear about it until a book gets released in 2030. But I dare say I would shift him on. I don't see that he does. He's probably the end of the cycle, should I say, for Rangers now. We've probably get the best out of him in that sense. And then one more. Again, I'll get shot down, but the captain, I would cash in the captain if the money's there. The Saudi window opens, I think it's next week or the end of this week, and if the money's there, I would take it and move him on. Another one, I think we've maybe kept too long. I know people will say we'll never replace him and blah blah blah, but we've replaced better players than James Tavernier and we'll continue to do so. So I think those would be the two. If the money was right, I would take and move on.
Right, okay. Brian, there was a lot of talk actually about Goldson and Tav possibly moving to Saudi. There's always going to be those reports made, I suppose, with Steven Gerrard still being manager over there. Robert's going for Goldson and Tav as his main two. Do you go along with that? Or is it a case of, look, we've still got Kieran Dill there who's not played. We've still got Scott Wright, who, according to just about every supporter, isn't good enough. Would Goldson and Tav this season offer us more than a Dill and a Wright?
It's hard to say.
Sorry, I'll jump in again. Or do we look at a Goldson and a Tav at the age that they are and go, we can get money for them? And if we can get, whether it's 2 million, whether it's 8 million, whatever the fee is, we will get more money for a Goldson and a Tav than we will for a Wright and a Dill.
Absolutely. And this is going back as what Stuart said, the guys were running down contracts. We let two of our biggest assets go for absolutely hee-haw, with Morelos and Kent. It was absolutely scandalous that we let those two go for nothing. As you say, there's Dowell, there's Hadji, there's Cantwell. Cantwell for me he's almost a bit of a sideshow with the squad. He's almost doing things that you're thinking, oh, come on, mate, wise up a bit. I'm just not sure about him. If he just got his head down, kept his social media stuff stoom, then fine. But he just can't resist a bite on somebody or having a jibe at somebody. And
that genuine doesn't bother me. It's somebody who relies on social media to try and do a wee bit of advertising. I get it. He's trying to grow his brand. That doesn't really bother me. It's frustrating when we're then losing games and maybe he's not playing great or whatever, and he's getting into ding-dong battles with Chris Sutton. I get that. But overall, what he does on social media, I really couldn't.
No. But when you've got Goldson sitting on 37,000 a week and Tav on 30 odd, that's a fair chunk of wages just on two players. And I think that alone is enough for us to say, right, guys, they're 31, 32. I think we've realistically got to be able to move them on and, get some cash in for them because, that's just wages that we really shouldn't be paying them. I'm sorry. 30 and 37,000 pounds a week is just, for me, just ridiculous.
There's some youngsters at Ibrox who I would imagine are probably on a fair whack because Rangers see them as possible players for the future that I think would probably surprise a lot of people. I don't know the numbers, so I'm not going to say it. Stuart, if I can get your answer on that, the question for Stephen Gillespie, and then also if you can then talk further on Todd Cantwell. Again, I don't want to start rumours, right? But he wasn't in the squad for Ajax, and unless I've missed it in the back, I'm not. I'm just going to ask you a question. Unless I've missed it, and I may have, and you can tell me if I've missed it. I'm not aware of an injury reason why he was left out against Ajax. The manager made the point about Tav having a slight ankle knock, I think it was, but nothing about Cantwell. Is that telling then that he's not even got any minutes yet so far this pre-season?
So, answer your first question. I think, I think there's going to be, there has to be more than two that move out, right? You know, when you're talking Lammers, etc. We'll surely move on. I think, I mean, the Goldson Tav thing is interesting because I think it would almost be a kind of statement from the manager and the club to say we're moving on. You know, this is a complete reset. This is a refresh. So I think, although then when you listen to the manager today, he's talking about these guys won't be playing 60 games the next season. You know, that's why their form wasn't great and stuff like that. So again, you know, take from that what you will. But I think that would be a statement. I think people like Scott Wright, I mean, I'm probably very critical of him. I don't want to be at Ibrox, and we need to make a substitution to try and change a game. And what we're seeing is Scott Wright being on the touchline. You know, that's, you know, look back at the cup final. It's a 10-yard pass that Diamande gives him, and if he controls a 10-yard pass, we're breaking on that Celtic defence. We've got the opportunity to go and potentially win and score a last-minute goal. He doesn't do that, and then we lose the goal from that. And I know that's picking on him, but I think there is a lack of quality. We see wee flashes, but it's just never happened. So, you know, I think he would be one. So one of Goldson Tav, I think, would be a kind of a statement. I think that defence needs refreshed big time. Should have been done seasons ago. So that needs to happen. I mean, but we could be here all night, I think, potentially talking about who might move on. In terms of Cantwell, I think we spoke about it last week. I'm 50-50 on Cantwell. I don't think he's done enough at Rangers. I think he's got the talent, and I think that's the frustrating part. I think Todd Cantwell's a really, really good player, and we've just not seen it enough in a Rangers jersey. I think he started off brilliantly that half season, and I thought, here we go. You know, what will he'll deliver for us last season? His numbers are nowhere near enough. What was it, 7 goals? Something like that. A player of his ability should be getting more than 7 goals for Rangers across a season. So if he was to go, I hope we don't let him go in the cheap away, because I think there is a very good footballer in there. So I think we should be demanding a decent figure for that. But if he was to stay, I wouldn't be disappointed if he stays. But it's a massive season for him, and that level of performance and the numbers that he gives to the team will need to ramp up. I'm not convinced the manager and Cantwell see eye to eye, though. That's the other thing. So that may well
don't go starting rumours now, Stuart.
I know I don't want to do that, but well, I think that's obvious. You know, and again, I wonder if the manager's frustration with Cantwell is because he sees that there's a really good player in there, but it's just not consistent enough. And if that ends that way, then it does. But I think that would be a pity because, I think he's a very good footballer.
No, he is a very good footballer. We'll finish up tonight then. Robert, we'll put it in the chat, in the comments, and I can't find it. The game against Ajax, Nico Raskin going off injured. Something that, I mean, he can't help it. I actually thought Ajax were quite hard on the tackling in that game, if I'm being brutally honest. But then again, it's a competitive game, albeit a friendly, but you still want to give your all. Raskin off, ankle injury. Guy's injured a lot, isn't he?
Listen, the still photo I seen didn't look great when he's in the crutches and the moon boot, but I think he falls into the Cantwell category where he's got a lot to prove. You know, he showed we get injured last season, but he showed a lot of promise in that kind of half season. Then there was the silly comments about joining Chelsea, and you know, I never feel like he's ever recover for that. I wouldn't be adverse to losing him, to be honest with you. I don't really feel that we can hang our hat on him as a mainstay in the midfield. You look at the games we've lost against Celtic, and they've all been lost in that midfield. I feel, and is Nico Raskin somebody you can sort of rely on to dominate a Callum McGregor or get one over on Rio Hatate. I don't see it. I'd be going with Connor Barron. Diomande, as Stuart's mentioned before, is somebody that we can really see progressing the side, and then another somebody with a bit of experience that hopefully is going to come in during the summer and add to that midfield. So I have to say, gutted for Raskin, because obviously he's trying to make a career for himself in a big season for him, but I wouldn't be adverse to having lost him. So obviously he's going to be in crutches for a while. I don't know how long he's actually out for. There'll then be a period of rehabilitation, so he's going to be fighting again like he was last season. So I don't think that suited him.
Brian, your thoughts then on Raskin, and just quickly after that, because it's only one game, it's very difficult to judge in one game. Your first impressions of Connor Barron?
Looked the part. You know, we've seen him a lot when he's been obviously at Aberdeen playing against us, and you know he was always quite physical and all action. So it wasn't really a surprising sort of performance that he put in. He looked at very at home. Playing in that midfield, didn't sort of look as though he was 21. He was an old head and young shoulders. But I mean, Raskin. I mean, as soon as I seen or somebody said that there's an injury, and I just thought, no, here it's like deja vu. Here we go again. I thought this is just last season all over, more injuries. But seemingly the prognosis isn't horrendous. It's meant to be just a week or so. So it's precautionary. So, but yeah, as soon as I seen the big moon boot, I thought, oh, great. Here's the first one. Here, hopefully not more. But I mean, as the guys have said, Raskin's got a huge season this season. He's promised for so long, and that first half when he came with Campbell, he looked really good. So it's all in his sort of, if he can stay fit, of course, but it's all in his hands if he wants to be a sort of he's already said that he wants to go down to the Premier League in England, so he's going to have to buck his ideas up if he's wanting to go down there.
And Stuart, I will give you the final word of tonight. Raskin and Barron.
I feel for Raskin actually, because look, enough pros talk about the fact that if you miss pre-season or parts of pre-season, the impact that it can have on you. And I hope Brian's right that it is just a kind of precaution, what the moon boot, and it's not as bad as it was, because what he needs is a run of games to hopefully, and he was getting a bit of that towards the end of the season. I thought he put in a decent performance in the cup final actually, and he does bring an energy, Raskin, to the team. So he's somebody that we need to be fit and at least making a play for that number 6. I think I said last week though, I'm not convinced that the manager is set that Nico Raskin is your number 6. I think the players that we're being linked with suggest that he wants to have another body in there, but at least if you've got Raskin competing for that, then that would be massively beneficial too. So fingers crossed that it's not too serious. On Barron, I didn't manage to see the game. I've only seen the highlights of the game on Saturday. I've read that again he was very impressive when he came onto the park. I think he's made a very decent impression on the manager since he's joined. So he's one that will be interesting. He knows the league, so you've got no fears of Connor Barron starting at Tynecastle on the opening day of the season. Because he kind of knows what it's all about. And yeah, I'm quite excited to see him in a Rangers shirt. I think he's got good energy, and I think their midfield has been absolutely crying out for that. Somebody that can get across the pitch. So long may it continue, but I think it's been a positive start. Ryan?
See, I've got thoughts in my head now talking about the midfield and Barry Rice, and there's so much more we can talk about, but we'll speak about that on Thursday night on the members show, which is only available on the membership page on our YouTube channel. So again, if you haven't, then consider becoming a member and get access to extra content, help support the podcast and help us on our way to hopefully growing over the course of the season. Follow us on all the socials, the link for which is in the description. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as well every Monday night. We will, like I say, the membership shows on Thursday, and then we shall hopefully have some post-match reaction on Saturday, and then hopefully our Random Rabble will be back on Sunday, although a few people aren't happy with Connor. So I might need to make sure that Connor's nowhere near the Random Rabble ever again. Because that's how democracy works. Everybody has to agree. So there we go. So my thanks to Robert, Brian, and Stuart for joining me tonight. Thanks to every single person in the comments. All your comments are greatly appreciated. You help the show keep going, because if nobody was watching, then we wouldn't do it. And your comments make more sense than half the stuff that we say. A massive thank you to Stephen Gillespie for his super chat, and the support that you guys give the pod is incredible. So thank you all, and we'll speak to you all again very, very soon.
Sports Social Podcast Network.